It's the Brad and John Show.
And it's the Brad and John Show. This is C Block on January 3rd, 2025, the third show of, I'm really messing up. Can I start over again? The second show of the year, even though it's the third day of the year. Okay, commercial right before we went on the air with Shelley Barr. I have some positive news. A week ago, yesterday, Shelley had some pretty major surgery, and I believe either yesterday eve afternoon or this morning, she will be out of ICU. So keep those positive thoughts and prayers running for Shelley. Okay, John, what's going on as far as if you look into your crystal ball, what do you think is going to happen with the big piece of legislation in the Missouri legislature, which will convene what? Wednesday, is that the date?
Next, let's see, what's the 8th? I mean, 8th is a lot of pomp and circumstance. So that would be, what day of the week is that? That's Wednesday?
It's Wednesday, yes.
Yeah, so really nothing important is going to happen next week, but the week after that.
What do you think is going to be the big thing?
I think there'll be a lot of arguing. About abortion. And I think that nothing will probably get done on that. Nothing will get passed until 2026. I think people are probably a little gun shy of changing Missouri abortion laws until 2026. The Missouri House will surely pass something, but nothing will get past the Senate because Democrats will filibuster it. I would say you have to look at the governor. So the governor is going to have a honeymoon period where everybody on the Republican side wants to rally around him and support him. I think the legislature will tackle eliminating Missouri's income tax. And I also think that Kehoe has made crime a priority. So something about crime, maybe state control of the St. Louis police officers will pass. So I would look at a lot of action and talk about abortion, but nothing passes and gets sent to the governor. Income tax cut will be a priority, and safety will be a priority.
Do you think that my amendment, the escorts for education, legalization of prostitution, do you think it has a chance?
I don't think until late summer, because I've seen your language that you've added to actually make it an additional click on the sportsbook apps. So after you pick your team, you go through and you pick blonde, brunette, big bone, small bone. Can I fit my hands around her waist? Or is she more the type of girl that I use, her hindquarters as reins? That type of stuff. But Brad, you can't fix the user interface quick enough to have that ready by late summer. So I would say that's probably a 2026 priority.
Okay, the big thing is we've got all the big things taken care of. At least some people would say not taken care of because they're going to fight it. But we've got legalized marijuana. We've got legalized sports betting. And it still hasn't happened. We have legalized abortion. There really isn't anything left, is there?
That's what, so there's a couple different ways to look at it. And if we go back to Scott Fawn's interview with Pete Mundo on KCMO Radio, Scott was talking about Governor Parson and the idea of the people that don't like Governor Parson are the people that are just tired of winning. Like if you hate winning and passing conservative stuff like tax cuts, smaller government, etc., in general, you probably are like, wow, I don't like winning so much. But to your point, Brad, if you're looking at progressive social moray stuff, yeah, you got abortion, you got gambling. Anybody can toke up if they want to. I don't know what else you put on the ballot. And by the way, also, let's not forget, minimum wage increase. I didn't send you this yesterday, Brad, but I was listening to my favorite finance show, which is Hedge Eye, and they were talking about the number of states that increased minimum wage starting, I guess that would be either January 1st or January 2nd, depending on the state. And the idea is, that Seattle increased their minimum wage to, I believe it was $20. Like, how are you going to do that, Brad?
Well, I heard an expert talk about this the other day, and it was pretty fascinating because his point of it was that what you're doing is you are making it tougher for young people to get a job because of the
Absolutely.
fact if you have, this is the whole thing. When you started out in your work career, when you got a job, your first job, you're 16 years old, and if you got a worker's permit, I think 15 and a half, you started at minimum wage because at that point in your life, you really don't have any skills. Now, I shouldn't say that because there are some people that do have skills at 15 or 16 which are employable. But for the most part, you're going to be a burger person, you're going to be, working at a car wash, you're going to be doing something which essentially the skill level is show up for work and we'll show you what to do. It's that simple. It's not like you have to have a degree or you have to have, practice or you have to learn how to solder pipes, like as far as a plumber, things like that. You show up, we give you a uniform, or you show up in your whatever it is, t-shirt and your sneakers, and off we go, okay? But what he's saying is, what they're doing is they're making to the point where if you have two people apply for a job, and they're each going to be $20 an hour job, they're going to, because the minimum wage has been forced, and the one person's 16, the other person's 25, guess who's going to get the job? It's going to be the 25-year-old. So it's going to get to the point where the elimination of that, I just think that's really sad. And what bothers me about this so much, and it's gotten to the point where nobody talks about it, it's these crazy, stupid rules that the government puts in. And perfect example, the 5-cent gas tax, which goes up every year. Didn't we just get another 5-cent gas tax increase? Wasn't that the way that thing went into effect, that every year for like 5 years we get another nickel added on to the gas tax in Missouri?
I didn't even think about looking that up, Brad. I don't know the answer to that.
Well, I believe it was the first of the year. And here we go with the thing where it's like, okay, why do we need, these are Republicans. And I know Bill Eigel just got really mad about this. And this was something pushed through where this was pushed through by the AGC, with the Associated General Contractors. Isn't that the big lobbying organization for all the big...
They're one group, yeah.
...road builders and things like that, because the money was earmarked for transportation. Now, we've got how many $1 billion for this project that's going to make I-70 6 lanes from, one part of the state, essentially from, sea to sea to from border to border. I'll put it that way. I can't get my mouth working right. That's like a couple $1 billion, isn't that? And that's to the point where that's already started. They're already doing some of the infrastructure. And the thing that's going to be interesting for me is there's a couple spots along I-70 when you drive, especially between here and Jefferson City, Columbia. First off, you've got where it narrows down going through Wright City. I go, okay, how are they going to do this? Because it's already like 2 lanes that are up against a median barrier going both ways. And then there's a railroad bridge down there, I think it probably about mile marker 180 or something like that. It's another situation similar to the Wentzville Railroad Bridge, where to the point where, guess what? They're going to have to build a new railroad bridge because there ain't no way you can squeeze any more than 4 lanes, 2 in each direction, on that railroad bridge. This is going to be like a huge, monstrous project. And I say once again, I'm a guy who drives I-70. When my kids used to live in Kansas City, I used to drive to Kansas City all the time. I never had a problem. Once I got west of Wentzville, I never had a problem until I got into Kansas City. And even still, I never had a problem there. I'm going like, okay, I don't get it. Why do we need 6 lanes?
I'll tell you why, Brad. First of all, I think we should cut to the chase, and that this is your partial resume you're sending to MoDOT because you've been itching to be on another MoDOT mission and committee for a while.
No.
You want to have your name in a binder that sits on a shelf collecting dust that no one ever looks at, because that was a high point, right, Brad? You loved spending your time on that MoDOT committee.
I hated it.
I heard you loved it, Brad. I heard that you call that the crown jewel of your career.
When I was still running my traffic network, when they decided to come in with, and they hired this outside engineering firm from Minneapolis, and these guys came in and they bought us lunch. It was actually sort of funny. They rented a room at the convention center and they invited all the traffic reporters in St. Louis, and the only 3 that showed up were myself, my brother, and Roger Brand of KMOX. I think he's still there. And you would have thought that this thing, oh my God, is going to make traffic so much better in St. Louis. The big thing, and people don't even know what they're driving by anymore, right there at Highway 40 and 141. Do you know what I'm talking about? You know the building I'm talking about?
I know exactly where it is. You can see Barrel Bob outside the building there.
That's the TIC. They call it the TIC, the Traffic Information Center, where all the cameras come back to that. And the guys driving around the motorist assist vehicles. And they told us this is going to totally be a game changer. And there's going to be no more traffic jams in the St. Louis area. And yet, I don't care how many lanes they build on southbound 270, from 40 down to 44. Every afternoon, John, guess what? If you drive south on 270 and you go toward 44, from sometimes even as far north as Oliver Page, what do you run into, John?
A little bit of traffic.
A little bit of traffic.
A little bit of traffic, just a little slowdown. You might go from 70 to 69. Nice.
You haven't driven that in a while because it's always stacked up. And what did the cameras do? Nothing. What did the and the other crazy thing about it is like Barrel Bob. Okay, Do you know in the Kansas City region he's been stolen a couple times? Do you know about that?
I do know. Yeah, that's audacious, man. You got to have some cojones to steal Barrel Bob.
Okay, on the next topic, I'm going to ask you a nosy question. You have 3 kids, right?
I do.
How many broken bones has any of your kids had? Have any of your kids ever had a broken bone?
Yes.
Which one?
Yeah, like I'm not going to talk about the medical stuff, but yeah, we've had only one broken bone.
Okay. I heard this guy again yesterday, and it was fascinating. He's talking about how child rearing has become so bad in the United States. And his point was, if you have kids that have never had a broken bone, they're being coddled. And I'm a guy that by the time I was 16, I've had, 3 broken arms. At 18, I broke my leg. In my early years, I had a couple broken fingers. In my later years, I've had broken ribs on several occasions. And he equates the number of broken bones you've had in your life with the level of risk you take in your life, and especially in kids. And he brought out these interesting statistics that talked about, and I can't remember them exactly, but he said you go back 30 and 40 years ago, and it was very common for kids to be in the emergency room with broken arms, broken legs, broken fingers, broken, ribs, stuff like that. Okay? Nowadays, not so common anymore. Matter of fact, he talks about there are a lot of kids, the majority of kids go through their adolescent years and not have one broken bone. And he says this is indicative of our culture with the way parents are raising their kids to avoid any type of risk whatsoever. So therefore, when these people become adults, they become so incredibly risk averse that they're afraid to do things. They're afraid to go places. They're afraid to get a new job. They're afraid to move. They're afraid to ask someone, to go out on a date with them. They're afraid to try a new restaurant. Do you see the correlation, or do you think this is BS?
It's definitely a stretch. And I think people who are clumsy and take, silly risks and break a lot of bones might look at a story like this and say, yeah, I'm right. I lived life the right way. And people like me, Brad, who've never broken a bone, and I rode my bike pretty much every day from the age of, 5 until I was driving without a helmet, never broke a bone. I don't think, man, when I was in the pasture that day, I should have taken a giant leap off that gully and tried to do a backflip. Certainly, children are more risk averse than they probably were 20 years ago. But also, Brad, this goes back to a conversation we had yesterday about people lamenting screen time. And I'm one of those people. When I see a parent hand their kid an iPad at a restaurant, I'm like, good God, have a conversation with your kid. Stop using the iPad as a babysitter. But that said, Brad, in the 1980s, there were old people of the greatest generation that said, kids these days are watching that color television. They should be out fighting wars against the Nazis. We're always going to look at the current generation and claim that they're soft. And once a week, Brad's going to quote Gary Vee and say times are too good and we're getting lazy. John, have you heard Gary Vee? Yes, Brad, we talked about it last week. Every week, people are going to say, yeah, kids are getting soft these days. But that's been going on for 100 years.
I will disagree with you, John, because it's a known fact. Matter of fact, I've heard 2 different generals give this statistic that of the male population, 18 to 35, which essentially is the military age bracket, 77% of those people could not pass the entrance physical into the armed services.
I'm sure.
Now, you go back into my dad's generation, and I think that number was probably 10, 15, 20%, because back then you didn't have obesity. For the most part, you did not. You didn't have, you people were active. They weren't essentially driving everywhere. I mean, my dad used to walk to school every day, that type of thing. My mom did too.
So let me interrupt, Brad. And I know, and we don't have to get into the Lawrence Welk anecdote, which I love when you tell that story. But Brad, you're right. I mean, people are obviously sedentary, and kids are more sedentary these days than they were. But my point is, we continue to say that generation after generation, and kids that are 14 years old now that are being called oinkers are going to call their kids oinkers in 30 years because the kids are going to be incrementally fatter. Like, I'm just saying that every generation men in 1950 were saying that men that were 20 years younger than them were being little pansies. And they're probably right. And men like you and I in 2025 are saying kids these days are little pansies. And we're probably right.
You know what we need to do? We need to play the Zager and Evans song. You know who Zager and Evans is?
I don't know. Are they takers to Everest to champs?
In the year 2025, if man is still alive. You ever heard this song? In the year
I don't know that one.
35, I'll send it to you because it will make my point. Is because when we get to the point where we don't move anymore and we have machines that do everything for us, that's when things go bad. And you know what happens? That's when the bionic Joe Biden comes back and wins the presidency in 2046. And I'm back, and I'm better than ever.
He's going to be great. Hey, Brad, I'd love to stay in chat, but Snowmageddon is coming. I don't know if you watched the news lately. Snowmageddon is coming. And my most important task today, I'm trying to front run your Monday announcement. I'm going to go to 270 and Page, and I'm going to steal one of those radio transmitters. And I'm going to put it up before you announce our signal boost on Monday.
Because
I love to front run you, Brad.
No, I'm going to go to the, the overpass there on Highway 40, which they call the TV overpass. It's right there between Hampton and Skinker. What's the name of the overpass? I can't remember the name of the Tam overpass, where whenever there's any kind of weather, especially snow and stuff like that, all the TV trucks set up there, and you got Joe Reporter or Joe Reporterette going, yeah, that's right, Jim. I'm here on the Tam overpass. You can see over my shoulder, traffic is barely moving because of the snow. Or the J.J. Kelly overpass on 270. You know where that one's at? That's the one.
No, I don't.
That's the one that's north of 270, or north of Manchester. That's the one if you're going south on 270. That's the overpass.
Yeah, okay.
That's the J.J. Kelly overpass. Hey, that's right, Jim. I'm out here in the J.J. Kelly overpass in where am I? I'm in De Pere, and as you can see, traffic is barely moving. God.
Just listen. Go get some bread. Go get some bread and milk, Brad. Don't mind the fact that milk's up 26% in the last 3 months. Just go get some milk. Or as you and I called it yesterday, Brad, milk.
I'm going to go get some
milk.
I'm going to get some frozen White Castles and some Little Debbies, and I'll be fine for the next week. Okay. Say goodbye, John.
See you Monday.